My name is Brandon Edmondson. I'm the Vice President here at Premier. We hope these times here on Friday have been a time for you guys just to kind of maybe recoup a little bit, see certain speakers and what they're doing virtually, and hopefully just been encouraging for your team. And so today, we hope the same. We are joined by Mike Staver. He is the author of Leadership Isn't for Cowards. And what Mike does is he takes a topic like leadership that can be kind of convoluted, a little broad, and a little noisy in the marketplace, but he really breaks it down in practical, actionable ways, makes it fun along the way. And today, Mike is going to be talking about the path forward, things to be focused on right now. I know Mike talked to our team about when you reopen, what are you going to do? What does this look like post-COVID? What does this look like in the office and virtual? So again, he's going to talk about the path forward, things to be focused on right now. So we're really excited to have Mike with us. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Brandon. Really, really good to be here. We were just talking before we went live about how things are out there in the world and how they've changed and what's going on. And so I'm really excited to spend time with all of you this morning, looking at what I think is the most important thing we all need to consider. I get asked a lot in my coaching practice and in my consulting practice, and certainly when we speak, about this idea of how do we manage all the things that are coming at us? How do we deal with all the things that we have up against us every single day? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend just a few minutes with you, sharing with you what our work has been about for the last 4 or 5 months and how we're helping companies and associations and school districts and not-for-profits all around North America navigate this path forward and what the path looks like. And so I'm going to invite you to join me in considering not only for your business, but also for you, what your perspective is on the path forward. Some of you are like, we got to get busy. We got to get moving. Some of you are like, holy cow, we've got another spike. We really need to back down and hit the brakes. Some of you have different varying perspectives. And that's what I want to talk about today, because the path forward is as much about what you're going to avoid as it is about what you're not going to do. So we're going to talk about what to do and what to avoid. Let's talk about this idea of perspective first. We could look at a piece of artwork and you could be standing on my left side and I could be standing on your right. And we could look at the same painting and see the painting differently based on our perspective. We could be heading west into the sunset and see the world very differently, or maybe even not be able to see it so clearly as the cars that are going to the east at sunset. So perspectives matter, and perspectives vary based on the space that you find yourself in. Now, I'm not very bright, so I don't make up definitions on my own. I tend to look them up. So let's talk about the first definition of a perspective. I love this definition: the interrelation in which a subject and its parts are mentally viewed. So you take something, a painting, a car, a family, an experience, a movie, and you see all of its parts and their interrelationship, and then you view them in a certain way. And what you do, and this is very important to understand, is you view them through what we call in our world filters. And a filter is just simply all your experiences and your biases and your beliefs and the way you see the world, and whatever comes in through your eyes or in through your ears is filtered through those particular perspectives. The second one is this: the capacity to view things in their relationships or relative importance. And that is to say that I see this and I see this. You do this all the time. You go to a restaurant and you look at a menu and you say, okay, well, I see this or this, right? You compare them, and then it's like right now where I'm trying to lose some of the COVID-15 that I've put on since COVID started. And so I look at a menu and I really like to have the fries, but I'm probably going to go with the salad because of the relative importance fries and salad have to my goal to lose another 5 pounds toward my goal weight. You do this all the time too. When you watch a newscast, when you have a conversation with an employee, or when you're working with a colleague or a customer or a client, you constantly are viewing things in their relationships and relative importance to each other. And so largely what you're experiencing every day of your life is a conversation or a relationship between various perspectives. And these perspectives are what create in you your behavior. In other words, they inform your behavior. They create a perspective that drives you in a particular direction. And so what we're going to talk about is what are the perspectives that are currently driving people, processes, organizations today? And how are these affecting you and those around you in a meaningful way? There are fundamentally three perspectives, and there's some subset perspectives. There's some other, what I call secondary perspectives, but these are the three perspectives that are fundamentally at play in the world today. Number one is health. There are those in the world today who are saying health matters above everything else. You got to be focused on health. You got to be focused on safety. You got to be focused. You got to be focused. You got to be focused. And in order to be focused, I've got to take care of my health above all other things. Number two is a money perspective. This isn't saying I want to be rich. This is, people with a money perspective because they say things like this. They say things like, I got to get back to work. Unemployment's running out. We got to put employees back to work. We're going to go out of business if we don't do something. We've got to take care of our customers. These are all money perspectives, right? If you run a company or manage a company or work in a company, you know yourself, you have bills to pay. You have customers to take care of. You have a family to feed. And so you probably have at least some concern about the effect of what's happening in our culture right now relative to what you're going to do to move yourself forward financially. And then the final perspective that we're dealing with is freedom. The freedom perspective simply says, I need to get out of the house. I need to eat in a restaurant. I need to go get a manicure. I need to get a haircut. I need whatever it is that you need to do. You want to be free to be able to do that. And so these three perspectives, if I would have said 5 months ago, there are three perspectives most human beings deal with every day. There's a health perspective and a money perspective and a freedom perspective. You'd have said, yeah, of course. Yeah. All of us want to be healthy. I just got off the phone right before this broadcast. I just got off the phone with a coaching client of mine. And I asked her, what are you most grateful for? She said, I'm most grateful that I'm a healthy woman of a certain age. She's looking toward retirement. Money's not as big a perspective for her now. So if she's looking to retirement, you see what her perspective is, freedom, but she's most grateful for her health. So these three perspectives work together all the time. And your job and role is to think through these perspectives in terms of how they inform your decisions, how they affect your own reopening or going back to work or going back to church, synagogue, or mosque, or whatever it is that you're looking at, how they affect your health. My mom is an example. My mom is 80 years old. She's amazing. Only evidence I know God exists. She's the most amazing person in the world. Beautiful, charming. You'd never know she was 80 if you met her. She's got autoimmune disease. She is a high risk person for getting the virus. My mom's obviously 80 years old. She's retired. Lost her husband, my stepdad, wonderful, wonderful guy, was in my life for 30 years a year ago. She had primarily a health perspective. In fact, we all laughed. My brothers and I laughed because we said, this is awesome. We finally get a chance to put our mom on restriction after all the times that we got put on restriction. And so we had those conversations with her. And what we realized as we had those conversations, and as I've been working with clients over the last 5 months, is that tension has developed. And the tension that has developed is the tension that has occurred between health, between money, and between freedom. What has now started to happen is that our culture, both politically and business and nonprofit and education and family and social, has started to experience torque or tension. And what is being forced to happen, what people are trying to force you to do is pick a perspective. And the false choice you're being asked to make is, if you're for health, you can't be for money. If you're for freedom, you're just a careless person that doesn't care about the lives of other people. And this is why we are dealing with a lot of the conflicts and challenges we're dealing with. Add to it the political climate, add to it our social circumstances right now, and the tension and torque between these three perspectives are important. So before I go any further, I'm going to ask you to decide right now, What is your primary perspective? And keep this in mind. Your primary perspective is the perspective that you hold on to in first place. But it doesn't mean that your secondary and third level perspective doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your primary perspective is health. It doesn't mean that you don't care about freedom and don't care about money. But for those of you who have a primary perspective of health, be careful, because just because somebody has a primary perspective of money doesn't mean they don't care about their health. So what is your primary perspective today? You can listen to yourself talk and know if you're saying, man, I got to make a living. I got to get back to work. I've got to pay my bills. At some point, I've got to get that straight. Then your primary perspective is money. But my guess is you're wearing a mask, depending on where you are and depending on what the restrictions are. My guess is you're wearing a mask. That means you care about money. It means you care about health as well. Same thing with freedom. You probably care about that as well. What is your primary perspective? In my mom's case, her primary perspective was health. But on Mother's Day, Laura and I have a FaceTime with her every Sunday. She lives in Florida. I'm in Arizona. And on Mother's Day, we called her and FaceTimed her. And when the camera came on and the sound came on, her house sounded like a football stadium. It was so loud. And I said, are you watching a movie? And she turned her iPad around and she showed me her house. And there were kids climbing on the furniture. Both my brothers and their wives were there. Dogs running around the house. Her great-grandbabies. She was holding a great-grandbaby. Nobody wearing a mask. Now, what I wanted to do is I wanted to judge. But I didn't, because occasionally I do something intelligent. And so what I did instead was say, Mom, why all the people? And listen to what she said. She said, you know, Mike, I came to a place after losing your stepdad a year ago. And she said, it was just the 1-year anniversary of his death. And I just needed to spend time with family. And so I needed to spend time with them. So I invited them over and we're doing all we can to social distance, which wasn't really true. But that's what's most important to me today. I'm willing to take the risk. I can't judge that because her perspective shifted to freedom, but she still has a health perspective. She still wears a mask when she goes out. She still social distances from people. She still does the things necessary. She doesn't have to worry about money, right? She's taken care of there. But her primary perspective on that day changed. And you know what? Your primary perspective will change as well. I have a primary perspective of money. My primary perspective, I employ 5 people. I've got payroll to make. I've got to pay the bills. And so I do all I can to generate revenue, to take care of clients, to do what we can so I can keep the people who I work with employed and help them with their families. But I wear a mask where I wash my hands, I social distance. I do everything I can to be smart relative to my health. You see, these 3 have to live in harmony, and there's a way for you to do it. There's a way for your company to do it, for your school to do it, for your nonprofit to do it, for your association to do it. There's a way for you to do it. Let me share with you how to manage the tension between the 3 perspectives. Number 1, manage your health. You need to manage your emotional, mental, and spiritual health, and of course, your physical health as well. Make sure you're taking time to rest. Make sure you're staying away from the news and away from broadcasts. Here's what I want you to hear me say. Whatever your eyes see and your ears hear is what your brain uses for nourishment. That's a tweetable moment, y'all. Whatever your whatever your eyes see and your ears hear is what your brain uses for nourishment. Be jealous of what you let in your eyes and in your ears. Number 2, you got to manage your connections. You've got to be actively connected to your social sphere and those people you care about. Isolation is the enemy. I don't like the term social distancing. I prefer that we use physical distancing. I don't think we need to social distance. I think we need to keep socializing, even if it's virtual. We need to stay connected to people while physically distancing. We need as a culture, we need as businesses, associations, educational organizations, so on and so forth, we need to talk less and listen more. There's far too much people espousing their opinion of what's happening and not enough time trying to understand. And then finally, don't judge. I saw a lady the other day, she didn't have a mask on. Everybody else had a mask on. I heard some snarky person in the grocery store say something to her, and she produced a card. She has emphysema. She produced a card that said she can't breathe effectively and could pass out, potentially even have pulmonary issues. I think a lot of people would have judged her. I probably would have judged her as well. Now, was there another way to do it? I don't know. But we spend a lot of time in our culture these days judging. So what do you do? What do you need to do in order to be successful? The first thing is this. No matter what stage you're in right now, whether you're wide open and everybody's back to work, whether you are wading into it slowly, and depending on the city or county, Brandon and I were talking about, it varies by city and county. It's not ever going to be like it was. So don't expect that whatever's next is going to be anything like it was before. And I think that's a good thing in some ways. In some ways, it's good. The second thing that I want you to do for yourself is give yourself time to adjust and reacclimate. This is a little bit like if you've had surgery or you've been working out and you've got to adjust and reacclimate as you rehabilitate. This is largely emotional and psychological rehab. And the people in your organization are going to come back and are going to deal with things at their own pace. You've got to be sensitive to those perspectives, because if you have a money or a freedom perspective and somebody else has a different perspective than you, now's not the time to judge. Now's the time to give ourselves time to reacclimate. Be patient with others, the process, and yourself. There's a lot happening, and there's going to be a lot more happening in the next 90 days as we come up on the election and as we start to see things unfold. There's no reason for us to draw lines. There's no reason to say you're either for me or against me. Don't let people force you into a binary decision. Re-entry is stressful. Self-care is more important now than it's ever been. And then finally, I want you to manage your energy. What do you need to do to manage that energy? So here's where we are. We are currently in a space where we have got to think about it in terms of how we become more successful at managing the perspectives, giving other people permission, right? You can have a different perspective than me. As long as I respect your perspective, as long as I do what I need to do with your perspective, we're going to be able to get along just fine. I need to give myself time to adjust and reacclimate. I've got to be patient with others, but especially patient with the process and myself. I need to make sure I understand that I've got to take care of myself. I've got to get some exercise, even if it's doing jumping jacks in my bedroom. I have got to take time away where I can relax and isolate and listen to good music or whatever it is that makes you feel better. And then I've got to manage my energy. You know, your brain every day evaluates energy, and your ability to manage what you invest energy in is important. Worry's a waste of energy. Watching the news, debating friends who have different political positions. These are all different. And so I would just hope today that in this quick 17, 18 minutes we've spent, that you now have clarity about your own primary perspective, the perspectives of those around you, and then how to manage yourself through this difficult time. Thanks for spending the time. I'm happy to take any questions, Brandon. If there are any questions or anything that I can answer for folks, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, thanks so much. That's such a great perspective in this time. I know there's just so many, like you said, there's fears, there's frustrations, and all those, places on the triangle we could be. I'm curious, as you look at, I mean, you speak to a lot of different groups and a lot of different business sectors. Do you see parallels between certain business sectors, say healthcare and corporate, the technology and automotive? Do you see any parallels between your kind of three buckets of freedom, money, and health and business sectors? Do you see any parallels there?
Yeah. So I think the more of a sales organization it is that's sales driven, like take, for instance, real estate as an example. When you look at real estate, it tends to be have more of a money perspective because these are commission only salespeople that have to get moving. And the market right now is on fire. I mean, houses coast to coast, north to south are just blasting off the market. But I will tell you that the best brokerages are managing health well and managing the money well as well. So the closer it is to primarily a sales organization, the more I see a shift towards a money perspective to keep the wheels of commerce moving. Healthcare obviously tends to be more health oriented. It's probably the most locked down in terms of there's not any freedom. I went to Mayo Clinic to have my neck looked at a couple of weeks ago. The protocols are very specific. So healthcare, for good reason, tends to be very locked down in that perspective. When we deal with financial services, as an example, I've got 2 financial services clients right now who are walking away from large amounts of square footage because they're finding that they're doing better virtually than ever before, which means, you know, they're kind of driven by that freedom perspective that also serves health, but also serves money as well, so they can keep things moving forward. So that's kind of how I see them breaking down.
That's great. That's great. A couple questions coming in now from the chat. Thanks, chat. Feel free to keep sending those. Mike, what are the best methods for adjusting and reacclimating?
Yeah. So the first are these 5 right here on the screen still. The best method is self-care first. Here's what's happening, because we haven't taken it's not like being in a car accident or having a sports injury or some emotional trauma, losing a loved one, although many of you probably have, and my condolences to that. The best way to do it is to acknowledge that this is difficult. And here's one of the ways that I talk about this, Brandon. I say, you got to embrace the suck. You've got to embrace that this just sucks. And there's no putting lipstick on this pig. There's not enough lipstick in every Ulta studio in America to make this pig pretty. So that's the first thing. Embrace the fact that this is difficult. Do not minimize it. The second thing is you've got to do self-care, right? You've got to have activity. You've got to stay away from poison, anything that is filling your mind with negativity or speculation or that kind of thing. And then I want you to give yourself a step at a time. You got to lean into the discomfort enough that you're uncomfortable, but not so far as to being careless or reckless. Those would be the big ones.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Another one, let's talk specifics about certain individuals. You know, that one person in your organization, they're adamant about their perspective, right? Like, I got to get it my way, whatever their kind of bucket is. Ideas to help them, to coach them through this time. Maybe even if you as a leader, you conflict with your needs conflicts. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, so we have a client that has a salesperson that's their number 2 salesperson in this particular region. He does a ton of business. And he basically took 2 months off during the lockdown. And when he came back to work, there was a protocol. You had to have your temperature taken when you came in. You had to sign in. You had to check a box that you didn't have any symptoms, and you had to wear a mask. And on his first day back to work, he just blew right past the front desk. He didn't get his temperature taken. He didn't sign in, didn't get nothing, didn't do a thing. Now, you might think, what a jerk, but he's actually a nice guy. And when the manager came to him and sat down, I thought she did a brilliant job of talking to him. She said, look, Michael, here's the thing. We have certain protocols in place to protect people, not just from COVID, but to help them feel more secure and more certain in our environment. And he said, well, you know, I was isolated. I haven't been around anybody. She said, I believe that's true. And I believe that that's probably accurate, and you do not have any symptoms and you probably don't have it. But it isn't that. The reason we're doing it is to help other people feel more certain. So here are the 3 things to do. The first thing to deal with is acknowledge their perception is real to them. One of the things is you've got to be able to acknowledge that their perception is legit, their perception is real, and I get that that's how you feel. The second thing I want you to do is to say, I get it, and there are certain protocols we have to follow. I was getting on a Delta jet the other day. A woman had her face mask around her neck, and the flight attendant said, you got to cover. So she put it around her mouth. And the flight attendant said, you got to have it over your nose and mouth. She goes, I hate masks. The flight attendant said, we all hate masks, but those are the rules. So you notice the acknowledgement and then hold the boundary. And then the third thing is you've got to have really good protocol for if they just flatly refuse. If they just don't do it, don't let them get away with it. People have to understand the path. Some people just don't get it. They just don't have any self-awareness.
Yeah, that's great. That's really helpful. Do you feel like leaders need to be holding themselves to a higher standard than their employees at this time?
I do. I think that, you know, in my book, Leadership Isn't for Cowards, one of the first lines in the book is we're messing with people's lives. But we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. And the higher standard, everybody, is modeling the behavior we expect in our followers. We've got to model what we expect. Right. We can't just be preaching it, right? We have to model it, but we have to model the understanding that all three perspectives are important. So we can't align with, just because you have a primary perspective of health doesn't mean you align against people that don't have that primary perspective. So yeah, I think we do absolutely need to do that.
And like you said, validating that, right? Letting them say like, you all have a seat at this table, right?
Yes.
And we understand that. And that has to come from leadership.
Yes, it does. That's right. Yeah. Exactly right. And it has to come from leadership in a way that says, you can have your perspective, but it doesn't mean the other perspectives are wrong. That's the problem we're having right now. Is there a lot of people saying, if you have a primary perspective of health, unless you have that perspective, you're wrong. Well, that's not true.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Any shout outs for companies or specific leaders that you've seen with a great perspective in this time that you've worked with that you would mind sharing with us, or just even from afar?
Yeah. I just did a live event, and I will tell you who's doing the best job I've seen right now. Delta Airlines. I tell you right. I know there a lot of you might be nervous to fly, but I can tell you right now, I would much rather be on Delta Airlines right now than in a Costco. I'm just saying. I mean, you go into a Costco with 250 of your closest friends. I love Costco. No offense, Costco. Delta Airlines, you get a Purell alcohol wipe when you walk on the plane. The airplane smells cleaner than the cleanest dentist office you've ever been in your life. Everybody has a mask on. Everybody's friendly. Everybody's trying to help. Everybody's trying to do what they can. They social distance you when you get on the airplane. They are doing a phenomenal job. Southwest Airlines, I haven't been on Southwest. I've got a friend who's doing a great job. The school system I just came from in Tennessee, Newport City School, K through 8. Great job. They're taking really good care of their teachers. They're figuring out how to do that. They're being respectful. And education's a train wreck right now. God bless you if you're a teacher or an administrator. But yeah, I think they're doing a really good job.
That's great. On that live event, I'm curious, anything that stood out, as far as protocol? I think things we would probably, obviously they were social distance. Anything else that stood out to you was like, oh, that was interesting that they did that?
Well, what really stood out to me was nothing around protocol, but more around how, like, we're here doing this podcast and we're talking and we're like, yeah, the three perspectives, that totally makes sense. But when you're out there dealing with it every day, like these teachers are, think about these teachers, students, families, administrators, colleagues, community, and then their own families. They're dealing with a lot of folks. And what I thought was amazing was the openness to ask questions for how to navigate this well and to take on the burden of doing things that are critical, like education, in a new and different way. And I think we can learn a lot from teachers right now.
That's great. Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, those in the healthcare community and those teachers out there, thank you for your service. It truly is service at this point.
They get it. They're
absolutely. Well, as we wrap up here, I think we have a fan of some sort, or at least a colleague that knows a little bit more of your personal plans. We have heard that you're heading out to Sturgis, South Dakota sometime today. Any input on what you will be riding?
I'm going to be riding a Street Glide CVO with a 117 motor in it. It hauls like nobody. If you hear something that sounds like a scalded dog from the West, it's my motorcycle flying through the back roads of Colorado. Just hope I can get out of the valley. It's 100 and I think it's 109 in the valley today. So I just need to get to some elevation fast, but thanks for asking. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Gotcha. And I just wanted to hit on this quote. I just thought it was such a good and valuable point for us guys. Whatever your ears hear and your eyes see is what your brain uses for nourishment. I mean, like that, you're right. That's a tweetable moment. That's something to write down. And as we are, taking in things, whether it's social media or the things that we're reading everywhere, as far as the cases and the data and the stats, take that in and be cautious about that. I think that is such great content for us, Mike. And thank you so much for spending the time with us today. Any closing thoughts?
No, not at all. But thank you, everybody. Good luck to you. And thanks for having me and hosting Brandon. You could do this for a living, man. You got the look, you got the whole thing. I think you could do this.
Well, we fooled a couple people along the way. No doubt about that. Mike, thanks again. We'll see you out there. Have a great week off out there. Okay.
Okay. Take care.
All right, man. Bye. Well, guys, thanks again for joining us. Hopefully, that's just some practical stuff. Like we're all dealing with that. We're trying to open up. We've got employees, we've got people that we just disagree with, right? So how can we do that in a way that is helpful? It's nourishing in these times so that we can continue to move this ball forward. And really, I hate to say it, unprecedented. The use of the word unprecedented is actually unprecedented. So that, it's a kind of a interesting double negative there for you. But yeah, like I just love that content and everything Mike brought to the table today. So for next week, we have Dr. Ivan Joseph. This guy is fascinating. He will be speaking on mastering the skill of self-confidence. So again, we're just trying to bring practical stuff. We all at times, we're going to bump into scenarios where we just do not have confidence. And it might be, logical and actually something that we need to work on. But man, he's going to come in and really give us practical tools, no matter whether it's parenting, leadership, or just being a good employee, mastering that self-confidence. So that's going to be a fascinating Q&A and discussion with Ivan. Hopefully we'll have Brian Lord back to host us next week. So you can go to premierspeakers.com/free to register. So from everyone on behalf of Premier Speakers Bureau, National Speakers Bureau, thanks to Eric Woody, our amazing producer behind the camera. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next week.